Welcome, folks, to the 25th episode of No Conference for Old Men, the podcast where three old guys are talking Houston Cougars basketball with a bit of Big 12 coverage added in as well, and proud members of the GoCoogs.com network, the undisputed number one Houston Cougars content provider. It's April in the basketball offseason, and as promised, we're dropping our first ad hoc episode in response to getting a clearer picture of next year's lineup, plus a huge pickup from the transfer portal early in the crazy portal season. As most fans have seen from social media, a big push from our Lincoln Cougs NIL collective with their Run It Back campaign has allowed us to bring back four of our starters, Roberts, Cryer, Sharp, and Francis, plus three of our key backups in Arsenault, Tugler, and Wilson going into next season. That, along with a commitment from Milos Uzan from OU to take over point guard duties from Jamal Shed, who rightfully is headed to the NBA, will provide for the most loaded team heading into a season that Coach Sampson has had during his entire tenure at Houston. And again, all three of us are back with Tom Lidiak, former coach, Bill Walker, former player, and myself, Steve Chang, analytics guy, for this episode. So we'll begin with some quick initial thoughts on confirmation that four starters plus three key backups will be running it back for next season. Then spend more time taking a closer look at the key transfer portal add in Milos Uzan from OU to take over for Shed at point guard for this loaded team. And then take a look at how we see rotations playing out going into next season. So let's get into it, guys. Huge news and commitment from our NIL collective in getting basically every key player back except Shed for next season. Tom, why don't you kick us off with just a brief comment from a coach's view around pulling this off?
Well, first off, I think it's amazing in this day and age of NIL and transfer portal to have, 4 year 5 starters come back, and the one starter who doesn't come back is going to the NBA. I think we only lost Jamal Shed, and then the other one was Damian Dunn. There are a lot of teams across the country that are basically every year they're starting from scratch. They're bringing in, 9, 10, 11 players in every year and revolving doors. So this is amazing. You have a team that was ranked number one for a lot of the year, and now we get those four starters back to go with those key reserves. It's just amazing. And the thing about Kelvin's program is all those players, even though they're veterans, they'll be better next year. Once again, just amazing that we could get all these guys back.
Yeah, incredible. Bill, how about a few quick thoughts from a player's perspective?
Well, I may disagree with you, Steve, when you say that we're bringing back our most loaded team ever.
Really? You think we've brought back a more loaded team in his tenure than this one coming back?
I think this previous year's team was maybe more loaded, and
wow,
that's because Shed made everyone on that team better. He is so dominant defensively. He's such an extraordinary team leader, such an extraordinary teammate. Obviously, the injuries kind of hurt everything, but there's no guarantee that there won't be injuries next year. You never know. So
yeah.
I just think Shed was so unbelievably good. I mean, he's going to have his jersey up in the rafters with Alvin Hayes and Drexler and Elijah and everybody. I mean, he's just a once in a generation, not only talent, but person and teammate that I think that can't be understated. With that said, yes, it's exceptional that the other four came back, and I do think we're the best team in the country heading into next season.
Yeah.
But there are still some questions to be answered, and we'll get into that.
Okay. I mean, from an analytics perspective, I couldn't have asked for a better scenario here. Obviously, losing our consensus All-American and Shed is huge, but to get 7 of our top 8 contributors back from a number one seed team is beyond what I expected. There were some rumors of possibly 2 of our kids potentially going into the portal, and I was thankfully wrong in thinking Roberts would turn pro. But the coaching staff, along with Lincoln Cougs NIL collective, shut that down early, with the kids one by one announcing their intent to run it back. with some unfinished business to take another crack at the national championship. Now, from an advanced analytics perspective, we're talking about getting 7 of our top 8 back from a team that ended the season number 2 overall in KenPom, number 19th in adjusted offensive efficiency, number 2 in adjusted defensive efficiency, and taking a closer look at that D. And granted, obviously, shed was key to the effective D. Number 2 in effective field goal percentage D. Number 3 in turnover percentage D. Number 2 in block percentage. Number 3 in steals percentage. And number 7 in the new stat that I'm starting to follow, free throw percentage D. And so even with Shed now gone as the leader of this defense, you factor in the improvement we expect from our kids after another year in the program. And we're looking to be, I guess conservatively, top 8 shape even before considering the add of Yuzhan, which we'll get into next. Bill, why don't you go first on this one? It's not the kid you were hoping for in Ace Baldwin, right? Somewhat like a Shed type player. But what are your thoughts on Milos Uzan as a player coming into our program?
Yeah, I'm very happy with Yuzhan. And during our last episode, I brought up about a half dozen point guards. Obviously, Baldwin was one, but Yuzhan was the first one I mentioned. And I couldn't be happier that we got him. I mean, the fact of the matter is, no one's going to replace Shed.
No.
But this is a hell of a pickup. First of all, he's got 2 more years of eligibility.
Yep.
This is someone who's going to get to come in and develop with the players that are already here. So that's great. He's the only OU player that started every game for them last year. He led them in minutes played at 32 a game. He did have a very poor shooting year.
He did, yeah.
He's 39% from the field and around 29% from 3. Yep. The thing is, he had games where he'd only shoot, maybe 3, 4, 5 times. And
exactly.
OU had a good offensive team. So, when you're not shooting that much, you don't necessarily get into a rhythm. And it's not entirely surprising that the shooting percentage went down. His freshman year, he shot 41% from 3. So he can shoot the ball. And he's a little different player than Shed in that perspective. This was surprising to me. He only shot 37 free throws for the entire year last year. I mean, that's not getting to the line at all. That's a little over 1 per game. So his best game last year was a 13-point, 10 assist, 7 rebound game at TCU. So, he can get it done, whether it's scoring if he needs to. Hopefully that won't be a big priority with everyone back and who we have on the floor. But he can get the ball to players. He can get inside. He can rebound. He's solid at everything.
Yeah.
Once again, everyone's going to be comparing him to Shed, which is...
It's tough.
Well, it is tough, and it's entirely unfair because,
it is.
Like I said, Shed is a once-in-a-generation player.
Agreed.
Even though he's 6'4", he's not as physically strong, not quite as athletic as Shed. I didn't watch Oklahoma enough. I can't imagine that he was the leader that Shed was. Obviously, you have to keep in mind, again, Shed had no peer in the country at point guard this past year. So it's really an unfair comparison. My hope is that he starts playing with everyone right away, that everyone's on the floor and they're playing a lot over the summer, because the one thing that Shed could do, he really got the ball to Cryer, to Sharp, Robert, getting the ball up to Javier. He got the ball to the other players where they wanted it, where they could catch and shoot, where they were comfortable getting the ball. And that'll happen as he plays more with them. And Arsenault, it'll be the same with Arsenault, even, Mercy Miller. And so, I think, the sooner he gets in, the sooner he starts playing, which will happen, he'll blend in. And like I said, I think with the addition of him, I think we're the best team heading into next season. And a lot of others, fortunately, agree with me. So it's not an biased comment without some support from non-biased people.
No, I know. It's crazy, right? Because we're starting to see all these way too early preseason top 25s. And it's not just one, it's quite a few of them have got us number one right now.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm happy with Yuzhan. He plays defense. He can handle the ball very well. I think he was about as good a pickup as we could have gotten. I'm thrilled that we have him.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. How about you, Tom, from a coach's perspective?
Well, first thing I want to say is, bottom line is Kelvin is the point guard savant / whisperer, and Uzan is the guy he picked to lead this talented and experienced squad. Kelvin's close to, like 37 games away from 800 wins.
Yeah.
And point guard, Kelvin says that point guard is the most important position for him. So you have to trust that when he went out and identified Uzan, that he knows that this is the right guy to lead this team. Kelvin talked about the Big 12 being that dog park last year in the preseason. Well, if you look at Jamal, and Marcus, they're built like pit bulls. You look at Uzan, he's long and lanky. He's kind of more like an Irish setter around the floor. So it's going to be a totally different type of style. Bill mentioned only 37 free throws. He actually probably plays more physical on defense than he does on offense. So I'm sure that's something Kelvin's going to work on him with. But first thing I'd like to talk about him is his defense. He's got a long reach as a help defender. He's able to deflect, steal the ball on the dribbler when he's the helper. Little thing about OU's defense, they switched a lot. They almost switched like 1 through 4. So I went back and I watched the Iowa State game. I picked the Iowa State game because Iowa State's the team that plays probably the most like we do, very tough, very physical. So I watched that game in Ames. He did guard Lipsy a lot, especially like in the second half. And the thing that stuck out to me was he was able to keep Lipsy in front of him for the most part. And also a couple times Lipsy tried to bully him to the basket. His length affected Lipsy inside. He did a really good job on Lipsy contesting whenever Lipsy went up for a shot. So defensively, he'll learn. I mean, as long as you have the foot speed, the athleticism, and you got the heart and the attitude and all that, you can be taught defense. And one thing I noticed about him on defense too is he communicated really well. He was constantly pointing and talking to his teammates about where to be, switching and all that. So that leads me to believe that he wants to be a leader, even though sometimes I wonder how much those OU players wanted to be led. But it'll be different, with the culture that U of H and Kelvin and his staff have. But I really like that. He really wasn't asked on defense to get in somebody's grill like we do. We just get right up into somebody's grill. He played more of a let's just contain the ball handler. He'll have to get more physical on defensive rebounds. Sometimes I noticed in the Iowa State game that he really didn't try to go for rebounds, outside his area. So I'm sure when they put that bubble on the rim and they do some 3-on-3 rebounding drills, he'll learn to go ahead and pursue the ball. Another thing I like about him, defensively, his height at 6'4", will allow perhaps Cryer to guard smaller point guards, maybe Sharp to guard the other team's 2, and then he can guard the 3. We'll just have to see what Kelvin has in mind. The game I watched, pick and roll coverage, they did what's called drop coverage, and he would do what's called a veer back. It's whereby he would go over the top of the screen and then he would front the big man as he rolled into the post. But then I watched a little bit of our game, and they played the pick and roll like we did. They went over the top of the screen, and the big men came out and, hedged the ball screen. So that just tells me that Oklahoma played different types of pick and roll defenses, so it's not going to be new to him at all. And he's got June, July, August, September, October to learn all this stuff. Yeah, totally different type of player from our previous point guard. But, there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that offensively. You can see he wants to lead on offense, too. He's pointing, telling teammates, where to go and this and that. He has good vision. He's 6'4". So he's able to see over the top of defense, like on a pick and roll when he gets blitzed. He's tall enough to where he can pass over the double team. When you're short, when you're only like 6', 6'1", you can't do that. And that's when you have to use that little pocket bounce pass. Another thing I think is really good for us is like Cryer at Baylor. His role with U of H is not going to be drastically different than at OU. He wasn't out there just bombing shots like Wade Taylor the fourth.
Yeah.
Taylor took 26 shots against us, and I heard a bunch of people clamoring for Wade Taylor. And it's like, you think Kelvin almost lost his shirt when Damian pump faked and then traveled. What would he do when Wade hoisted a 30-footer with 20 seconds left on the shot clock? But anyway, his role's not going to be drastically different from it was at OU, so that I think that's going to make the transition smoother rather than have like Damian Dunn come in, who was the first option for Temple, and he comes to us and he just seems to be lost all the time. One thing I noticed, another thing about OU is he shared point guard duties with McCollum, and then he spent a lot of time in the corner.
Yep.
We'll see if Kelvin uses him as the primary point guard where he has the ball in his hands like Jamal did. So that might be why he wanted to leave OU.
Yeah.
He just didn't have the ball in his hands a little bit. I would say as a passer, he's nuanced.
Yes.
He's going to be able to get his assists in different ways than like Jamal did, but he's very nuanced as a passer. He's good with his right hand. He's good with his left hand.
Yep.
He can throw the alley-oop. Like I said earlier, he's going to have to get stronger, though, in the paint. Sometimes when he gets into paint, he's like a pinball. He's just like bouncing off bodies here and there. Last thing, couple of tidbits and nuggets I got from him. He does a lot of palms up stuff to the ref and all that. I'm sure Kelvin's going to get rid of that. But he's the son of a coach.
Yes.
He has a high basketball IQ. He has positive body language. It looks like he's constantly trying to, encourage his teammates. He's not shaking his head and with bad body language and that kind of stuff. I thought when I saw him play, he's unselfish and he's a smart player. But overall, I'm excited to get him into the program. And last couple of years, Kelvin's had to replace 3 starters, 4 starters. Still kept the ball rolling, and now 4 of the 5 back. And I know Jamal's one of a kind, but the team will just have to do different things to pick up the slack. They'll just have to score in different ways. Defensively, I'm pretty sure will be the same, but you might see a little bit of just the slight different nuances on offense and how we get our points.
Yeah, great stuff, Tom. I'd actually highlighted 2 portal point guards I really liked last episode in Milos Uzan and PJ Haggerty from Tulsa. Both had 2 years left, with Milos really being the one I liked more, given his size and familiarity with the Big 12. So obviously, I loved his game. From an analytics perspective, Yuzhan was a high utilization player for OU, played 78% of the minutes as a sophomore, 71 as a true freshman previous year. As you guys had highlighted, this past season, he had 9 points, 3.4 rebounds, 4.4 assists, 1.2 steals. Didn't shoot well, as Bill had mentioned, 39% field goal percentage, 30% three-point percentage, 68% free throw percentage this year, in comparison to his freshman year where he was highly efficient with 7.6 points per game, 2.7 rebounds, 3 assists, 0.8 steals, but at a 47% field goal percentage and 41% three-point percentage and 77% from the free throw line as a true freshman. So the stats were better and more efficient as a true freshman, so you hope his efficiency goes back to his more freshman-like levels. Also, his 4.4 assists per game are extremely impressive since, as you had highlighted, Tom, OU played him with a point guard-like player in McCollum, and they rotated initiating the offense between the two of them. From an advanced analytics perspective, he was a player box score +/+2 for this past season, and his freshman season, he was a +1.4. So good, but not great. When OU played us this season, Yuzhan played 35 minutes, had 6 points, 4 assists, 3 rebounds, 1 steal, and a player box score +4. but expect these numbers to go up big time under the watchful eye of Coach Sampson and his staff, since we're a great developmental staff. Now, beyond the analytics, as you guys had mentioned as well, when you watch him play, and I went back to watch highlights as well as a couple of the games, including the game against UH, I just really love his game. You guys had mentioned he's tall and long, plays at an effortless pace, high basketball IQ, who understands the angles within the games. Your comment on nuanced passers is just spot on, Tom. He comes from a good program in OU who played sound D, ranking 36th in KenPom in adjusted defensive efficiency. But clearly he has a lot to change and improve upon in terms of defensive approach, where OU would almost never fight through screens to track their defensive assignments, almost always going under. Yuzhan is an elite passer with great vision, as you both had highlighted, which will help with our offensive efficiency numbers next season. His length helps him see over his opponents, and he was a point guard that I felt was exceptionally adept at finding the openings for skip passes to find open three-point shooters. Really the perfect pairing given we have a shorter shooting guard in Cryer. I've read some fan comments online suggesting that, he doesn't appear fast and, looks disinterested at times. But I would say, look more closely. He's a team player who works hard trying to get his teammates engaged, so he's not hunting for shots. He's got a very calm personality, so he won't be the fiery point guard that Shed was, but he's very intelligent and plays hard on every play. He's very quick with the ball in his hands, and don't let his smooth movement lull you into thinking he's slow. Not saying he's at this level, but for comparison's sake, he's very quick and smooth with the ball, like how Clyde Drexler and Steph Curry are with the ball. Smooth and efficient versus sudden and explosive, but just as quick and effective in the end. He basically moves us from what I had highlighted earlier, like a top 8 preseason team without a point guard in play, to a top 3 team conservatively, in my opinion. And I can't wait to see him be integrated into our schemes by Coach Sampson. So finally, I know we touched on this in our last episode, but now that we basically know what our roster will look like, how do you think the rotation will look like? Tom, you want to kick things off?
Well, everybody's going to have to compete for a position. All three of us know that. I mean, Kelvin's not going to come in there and say, okay, here's our starters, on day one. They're going to have to earn it. But after all that's said and done, I expect to see Uzan as the point guard, and then Cryer, Sharp as the guards, and then probably Francis, Roberts at the 4 and 5. We'll just have to see about that. I don't know. Maybe Arsenault can crack the starting lineup. But as it stands right now, I would still expect him to come off the bench. Same thing with JoJo Tugler.
Yep.
Well, Bill Self mentioned this during the season. He said, I'll never get caught with a roster like this again. He said, next year, I'm going to have 8 starters. And, with TA and with Tugler coming off the bench, I mean, you can say that's 7 starters right there.
Absolutely.
You could start Tugler. You could start Arsenault at the 4 and the 5, or Francis and Roberts. Anyway, that's the way I see it. I really like Malik. I really like the way he came on at the end of the year. I'm not sure about the freshmen. A lot of people are really high on Mercy Miller, Chase McCarty. I'm not sure, how much playing time they'll get. I mean, a lot of people are saying, well, Mercy's going to see a lot of playing time. Who knows?
Yeah.
We don't know. He's a freshman. It takes a while to pick up our defense. But then again, nobody thought, at least I didn't. I never thought Marcus Sasser would play as much as he did right off the bat. He was not as much a ballyhooed recruit as some of I can't remember who our other guys were in that class. I think wasn't Jawan, in that class, but
I think he came in with Caleb and
and Marcus was probably the least talked about recruit, but he came in, and it all depends on who you are. Some guys pick up things faster than others. Who knows? But definitely there's your top 7 right there. Just stout. You got Ramon. You never can forget about Ramon coming off and diving on the floor, getting key rebounds, being tough as nails, every now and then making a bucket. That's the way I see it. Am I missing anybody?
Yeah, I mean, we're so deep next year. We still have KJ Jefferson we haven't seen yet, McFarland.
Yeah, I'm missing. I forgot about Cordell. You said Ryan Monso was told by a staff member that Cordell's going to play some point guard. I mean, that's coming from pretty much the horse's mouth there, not just hearsay, but that was a staff member. So, and Cordell's he's been in the program for a while. It's not like he's coming in June as a wide-eyed freshman. We'll see. I've never seen him play, but from what I hear, he's a dog, and really like the squad.
Yeah.
Jefferson's 6'1", and he is a point guard. So I think that from everything I've heard about him, how ultra competitive he is, I didn't know that they were going to bring back Malik. I thought they were going to, go to the portal, get a point guard, and Jefferson would be the backup. But maybe they want him to develop a little more. I don't know.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill. Why don't you cover what you think the roster is going to...
I don't know how you could argue with what Tom said. It's Sharp, Cryer, Uzan, Francis, and Roberts. As soon as Kelvin sees the need, Tugler's going to come right in and replace one of the two, whether it's fouls or whether he thinks Tugler can better take advantage of the opposition, whatever it might be. Arsenault's most likely he'll be coming in for one of the two guards, Sharp or Cryer. That whichever guard doesn't come out will be the two, and then Arsenault will play the three. Those are the primary 7 that are going to play. Unfortunately, I don't think Seth will get as much time this year.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Barring injuries. So we'll be okay there. I don't know a whole lot about McFarland. So I know he's rail thin, 6'10", but he's rail thin. So, yeah, I'm interested to see him play. Yeah, I think McCarty's kind of like a Terrence or like a Ramon.
Yeah.
So he'll be playing behind them. And then you got Jefferson coming off the bench, when he gets to play behind both Uzan and Malik. And then kind of the wild card in all of this, I think, is Mercy Miller. From what I've seen, the highlights I've seen of him in high school and everything I've heard, it sounds like he's ready to step right in and
I know.
potentially score on anybody and potentially be a team leading scorer. But obviously, there are things that are required at U of H and that have made U of H so successful that he's probably well behind the curve on, meaning defense and rebounding.
Yeah.
He'll certainly be coming well off the bench, but it'll be interesting to see how quickly he picks up on everything. I love, after the end of the season, being able to talk about, 3 deep at small forward, 3 deep at point guard, 3 deep at shooting guard. With said, you could say 3 deep at center, if you consider McFarland to play center. And then you've got Roberts and Tugler at the 4. So, and all those guys are interchangeable. They can all play 4. They can all play 5. So, I mean, right now the team is just unbelievably deep. Steve, I argued with you about the most loaded team ever, but I would say this has got to probably be the most full team, the greatest depth that we've had. That I won't argue with.
Hey, another thing is, bringing back Jawan, he's going to be healthy.
Yes, exactly.
Look what he did with 7 stitches and a bum knee or shin or whatever. So hope and pray that, he avoids the injury bug again. But that's what I'm excited to see him full strength next year again.
Well, I hope he's healthy, and obviously the hand is going to be fine, the shin fine, but the knee is, what you have to worry about, and I've got to imagine that lingers to some extent.
Well, he had surgery. I don't know if you saw.
Online.
No,
I know that. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So he got it taken care of early. There hasn't been any feedback that there were any complications or anything like that. So he's got plenty of time to recover at this point.
Hey, did you guys see Arsenault? There was a video of him shooting baskets. Looks like he's back in the groove.
Yeah, which is phenomenal, right? So if he can start shooting and working out, that's fantastic. So that's why, you guys have gone through all the names. That's why I felt like this roster is just the most loaded. And whether how you define loaded, right? I'm talking about depth, where we've got multiple players that I would feel comfortable playing at any point in time, right? So you're talking about Cryer, Sharp, Yuzhan, Wilson, Jefferson returning on the perimeter, Roberts, Francis, Tugler, Lat, McFarland at the 4 and 5 slots, and Arsenault and Walker at what I'll call the hybrid 2, 3, 4 spots, depending on matchups, plus 2 freshman perimeter 4-star players in Miller and McCarty that I don't even know how you get them any minutes on a team like this, but you got to figure a way. I expect to see everyone play during the preseason, perhaps spreading it out around almost 25 minutes a game for our starters, other than Yuzhan, who needs to get more comfortable. So he'll probably see more minutes similar to LJ Cryer this season. But come conference time, I expect a heavy dose of Yuzhan, Cryer, Sharp, Roberts, and Francis, with heavy doses of Arsenault, Tugler, and Wilson. But the difference, I think, is I believe Arsenault is going to be featured more this year, coming back for his 3rd season. I think he's going to play the 2, the 3, the 4, and he's going to get starter-like minutes. And I think we're going to start seeing Tugler play more. The beauty of it is now we can feel free to play the kind of defense intensely all game long without the fear of foul trouble, which is just incredible, right? And so Coach Sampson's going to feel free to change people out. And quite honestly, if people are starting to slack even on one possession on D. So we were the number 2 defensive team in the country at the end of the season. I expect us to be number 1 throughout the entire season coming up. And we'll be able to come in waves with different matchups like we've never been able to do before. You want to talk about suffocating teams on D and wearing them out in the second half like we've done this past season? Next season will be even more intense, and it will be just such a treat. So I'm looking forward to it. So anyways, I think that's it for this episode 25 of the No Conference for Old Men podcast. Hope you all enjoyed it. And again, would really appreciate it if folks would follow, subscribe, or collect our podcast, depending on your podcast platform of choice. We are also available via the Republic of Football podcast feed from the folks at Dave Campbell's Texas Football as the only basketball-centric podcast, or at the GoCoogs.com website for those that prefer to digest the content that way. We appreciate the continued support from all, and please give us a follow on our Twitter account, No Conference for Old Men. And as a teaser, we hope to have a special ad hoc episode in May where we're going to try to get our very own Cougar great Reed Geddes on the show for our special interview to talk about our great Houston Cougars Hoops program, past and present. So please be on the lookout to download and listen as the episode drops. Take care, everyone.